Hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to Cal. Welcome to the College of Letters and Science. We are so excited to be presenting this webinar to you all today. And the first thing I just want to say is congratulations. You got into Cal, and we are lucky that you've decided to come. So today, let me, first of all, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Tori Bookstein. I'm an advisor in the College of Letters and Science, and I've worked here for 17 years. I'm also a graduate of UC Berkeley's College of Letters and Science, class of 19. And I also have another presenter with me today. And do you want to introduce yourself now, Brandy, or later?
Hi, everyone. I'm Brandy Buckley. I'm also one of our advisors in Letters and Science. I went to a different UC for undergrad, so I'm glad to have Tori here today for her experience being an actual student at Berkeley, but I am definitely happy to be here to answer your questions.
And I am so happy to have Brandy here. And the other UCs are almost as good, just not quite. On the next slide, I just want to show you something that we're calling community agreements. It's just sort of a little bit about what for you to expect today, what we are expecting from you today. So our goal is to give you more insights on schedule planning, the courses you might take, the requirements you might have to fulfill, things like that. We're not going to answer every question today. We're going to sort of cover a lot of the things that we know people are asking about. But there's also so many other resources for you. So if you have a question that isn't answered today, know that you can go to your B Courses mailbox and write your advisor. You can go to your advisor's office hours. There will be more webinars. So this is just sort of the beginning. We also really encourage you to take a look at parts 1 through 4 of your final assignment. We don't want you to turn that in like at the last minute. We want you to be looking at it pretty much over the next month, because you'll be thinking and growing and getting more impressions of what you want to do at Cal. When you have questions for us that we're going to try to answer, we might answer them live or in the chat. You can direct them all to the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. I see that there's one question there already. We can't answer questions through chat. Next slide, please. So today, the number one thing that we are going to mention to you is a brand new, really exciting program called the L&S First Year Pathways Program Information. Brandy's going to tell you all about it, but I am so excited about this. I just want to put in my plug. Cal can feel really big. We are a 40,000 person campus, and it's up to you all to find the programs that help make it feel small. And this is a brand new one with a ton of attention, a ton of great resources. And those of you who participate in it, you might really feel like, okay, I've connected with people. I found my place. This place doesn't feel too big. So I really hope you'll be interested in it. We're going to talk to you about your course enrollment, enrolling in courses, when you will do it, which is the phase, and what are sort of your deadlines. We'll talk about grading options. Some of you may have heard that you can get a letter grade or something called pass not pass. We'll talk about how to decide when to take the pass not pass option. We're going to talk about sort of your scheduling priorities. What is the sort of overall best ways to look at how to plan your first semester? What is a balanced schedule and why is that important? We might have some advice just on what classes to choose, and then we're hoping to have a little time for Q&A at the end.
All right. So thank you for that great introduction, Tori. We're going to jump into an exciting program called Pathways. So this, like Tori said, Berkeley is a really big place. And this is a really great opportunity for those of you who may want to try to build some community and mentorship in your first semester and have a little bit more of a small cohort experience. So the Pathways program is designed to help you move through breadth requirements, which if you watched our degree plan requirement webinar yesterday, you'll be familiar with, but these are general ed requirements that you must take before you graduate. And Pathways is designed to help you navigate some of those requirements in a unique and interesting way. So this program links 3 themed courses together in a cluster, and you'll be able to have each of those fulfill one of the breadths. The best part is that you'll be doing this with a cohort of 25 students and a renowned professor as your mentor. So again, just a really great way to make this huge campus seem smaller. And one last advantage of this program is that you're going to have a little bit of an easier enrollment experience, because once you've been accepted into this program and into one of the cohorts, you're actually going to be automatically enrolled in those classes. So that will take up the majority of your schedule. And then all you'll need to do is really just add 1 or 2 units to meet your minimum unit threshold for full-time status. And that is definitely something that your L&S advisor can help you with. So if you do choose this pathway, there is an option on your final assignment to note that. All right, so some of the clusters that we have for fall are art, history, and moral imagination, California and from the field, technology and society, art, environment, and economic policy, California and water, and neuroscience, philosophy, and society. So if any of those themes are ringing any bells, I encourage you to explore this a little bit more. So we have our website, lsfirstyear.berkeley.edu. And you'll want to make sure to read through the FAQ. Also, just read more on those clusters. It will tell you which classes are in each cluster so you can get an idea for which departments they're in, which breadths they fill, and see if it's exciting for you. I do want to highlight that this program is only available to you in the fall of your first year at Berkeley. So if this is an opportunity that's exciting, don't miss out. The deadline is June 14th to register, and you'll find it out if you got accepted into a cluster or waitlisted for a cluster just 2 days later on the 16th. And then if you do want to find out more, we have some upcoming webinars on the Pathways program. So June 9th, this Friday from 11 to noon, and then Monday, June 12th, 11 to noon. And those Zoom links are on that same website from before. That's lsfirstyear.berkeley.edu. There is limited space, as we said, it's only 25 students a cluster. And so signups are open now. And we wanted to start here because if you do choose Pathways, your enrollment experience is going to be pretty different than some of the things we'll talk about today. But that's just for your first semester. So I want to highlight that whether you choose this program or just choose our regular enrollment pathway, this information in this presentation is still going to be relevant to you either way, because we'll be addressing things that are going to impact your schedule planning and enrollment throughout your time at Berkeley. All right, so now that we're going to adjust into things that actually impact everybody, we're going to talk about enrollment phases. So an enrollment phase is a period of time in which students can enroll in courses through their CalCentral. So we actually break enrollment down into these periods of time, and in each period you can enroll in a certain amount of units. And this is how we keep it so that, since we enroll from seniors down to first year students, that the seniors don't take up, say, all of the seats, so that we have people prioritize their most important classes in one wave and then have the next wave prioritize their next most important classes. Now, this can cause a lot of confusion for incoming students because you might read some information online that feels like it conflicts with what we're telling you in GBA, but that's just because enrollment phases work differently for continuing students versus incoming students. So as an incoming student, you're going to get a phase 1 and an adjustment period. But your phase 1 is going to have an enrollment limit of 17.5 units. And that combines courses that you've actually enrolled in and secured a seat, as well as anything you've waitlisted for. At the end of your phase 1, your adjustment period begins, and that lifts that limit to 20.5. And while we would never want you to be taking 20.5 units in your first term, most students will never take a unit load that heavy in their entire time at Berkeley. You might use this if you're still waitlisted for classes and want to make sure you have a secured seat in a class that you're not waitlisted for. When you're a continuing student, you're going to have this extra phase at the beginning where you'll enroll in 13.5 units. So if you see that number, just know that that won't apply to you until it's time to enroll for spring. You can find the start time to your phase 1 on CalCentral, as well as the time your adjustment period begins. All first years are going to start enrolling on the same day, just at different times. And I do want to highlight that your time is set. You cannot change that time. During this phase, you can add, drop, or change grading options to classes. Tori's going to talk more about grading options later. So that's when you'll be starting to enroll. Let's talk a little bit about when you're going to stop being able to change your schedule around, which is where we come to deadlines. So the first thing I want to highlight is that at Cal, deadlines are taken very seriously. If you miss a deadline, whether it's because you weren't aware of it, or even if you had like a technical issue in the last minutes because you waited till the last moment to make a decision, unfortunately, there's really nothing that can be done if you miss a deadline. So what I recommend, it's not meant to scare you, but what it is meant to do is just say, be aware of deadlines. Every term, go ahead, check out what the deadlines are for the semester. I recommend putting them into your BCal, and that way they won't sneak up on you. So you can find deadlines on our website. So if you jump to our homepage on the L&S Advising website, we'll always have the deadlines for the current semester right here on the left. Now, summer deadlines operate a little bit uniquely because there are so many different sessions and some of the policies are a little different during summer. So for today's presentation only, we've put our spring deadlines back up on the website so you can see what this looks like in a fall or spring semester. So the first deadline I want you to be aware of is this early drop deadline. Now, this only has a few courses that have early drop deadlines, and you can check out the list through the link on our website. Some ones that might be something you might consider in your first year might be, say, some of the biology classes or the Spanish classes. And then if your class is an early drop deadline, it means that you have to make a decision on that one by the second Friday of the term. All other classes, you'll have the drop deadline. Sorry, we got out of full screen here. All right, so every other class, the drop deadline is going to be the Wednesday of the 4th week of instruction. And that's the same day as the add deadline as well. Now, I do want to highlight that doesn't mean you should wait until the 4th week to find new courses to add. At that point, it's probably not a good idea to add something that you haven't already been attending. So if you're thinking that there's some uncertainty about your schedule, definitely encourage you to be adding courses and attending any courses that you think you might add later, starting right away in that first and second week. We're going to have some other deadlines here. I want to highlight that the grading option deadline is in the 7th week of instruction. But in general, I want you to just spend some time when we get a little closer looking at some of these policies. And Tori has a look on her face and I'm thinking grading option deadline is 10th week of instruction. Yes, 10th week of instruction. Thank you, Tori, for your corrective face. So there are other policies here that are definitely worth exploring, like our late change of class schedule deadline and our withdrawal deadline. You can always click on the links for these policies to learn more. And under academic difficulty, we have this options if you're struggling in your courses link that'll walk you through whether some of these policies and options could be a good fit or not a good fit based on your circumstances. Okay, so we get to now bounce back to Tori.
All right. Well, and if you all were in the room, I'd have you applaud because Brandy was not scheduled to do the first 19 slides, but we had a change up. And so she had to do that. And also, I just want to acknowledge now you know your advisors are human. I forgot my camera was on when I was making that big face. So I do apologize. Brandy,
I appreciate the face. I appreciate it.
It's a very nice face. So your deadline is the 10th week of the fall and spring terms for Pass Not Pass. And this is something that you will, if it doesn't really click for you immediately, don't worry, because you can follow up with your advisors, not just all summer, but all the way until the Pass Not Pass deadline every term. But there's some important stuff that if you grasp it, it makes things easier. And I'm really proud of this graphic because I designed this graphic. So this gives you a sense of what Pass Not Pass does. So Pass Not Pass means you get just a passing grade or a not passing grade for a class. Whereas if you get a letter grade, you get anything from an A to an F. And when you get a letter grade in a class, it impacts your GPA. So which is, of course, your grade point average. And I want to say really loudly, GPA is not everything. And I have a workshop called the 4 Steps to Success in Letters and Science, and I'll be putting a link to it in the chat, where I talk about sort of how to really thrive and succeed here. But there are lots of places once you graduate from Cal that won't even care about your grades. Lots of jobs won't look. So there are some graduate schools where really grades are not the most important thing you need. At the same time, if your personal priority is to keep your grades as high as possible, maybe you need to keep a scholarship or you want to get access to an honors program, it's good to understand how you can use pass not pass to influence that GPA and keep it a little higher. So let's say you're taking 4 classes this semester and you're getting 2 A's, a C minus, and an F. Now, if you take all of those classes for a letter grade, then your GPA is going to be a 2.43, which again, totally fine, plenty to graduate. A 2.0 is average, right? C is average. So this person is above average, and Cal is one of the hardest grading schools in the country. At the same time, maybe you need to maintain a 3.0 to get access to a study abroad program or something. If that same student changed the C minus class to pass not pass, changed the F class to a pass not pass, then they would get an A, 2 A's, a P, and an NP. And that's a 4.0 GPA. That's a straight A GPA for that semester. Same work, same grades, but one of them impacts your GPA differently than the other. So I want to sort of talk about when you might choose pass not pass. First of all, everything goes out the window if you're not passing your class. If you're sure by the 10th week of instruction, there is no way I'm going to pass, then choosing pass not pass can be an excellent choice. So you'll see here on this slide that it says no pass not pass for certain classes. I want to be clear, that is if you are passing them, okay? Except for the reading and composition classes is an exception, and we'll get to that. But in general, foreign language, quantitative reasoning, your major requirements, and also your graduate school requirements, if you're passing them, it's really good to take them for a letter grade. If you take them for pass not pass, they're not usually going to count. Definitely foreign language and quantitative reasoning won't count. Major and minor requirements and graduate school usually won't count. But if you're not passing them, it doesn't matter, because an F or an NP, the NP is going to hurt you less, and neither one is going to fulfill that requirement. If you are passing these classes, your entry-level writing, reading and composition, foreign language, QR, major requirements, you definitely want to leave them letter grade so you can get them done. And I do want to be clear, for entry-level writing and for reading and composition, we cannot change those classes to pass not pass at all. Now, what that means is that if you are in either of those sets of classes, we really encourage you to have everything else around it be sort of a little bit of a lighter load that semester. So if you're one of the people who's going to be enrolled in our 6-unit college writing R1A class, we very much recommend that you not pile on a whole bunch of other classes around it, because it's really good to prioritize those writing classes, since you don't have these sort of escape vents of, oh, I can change it to pass not pass, and then it won't hurt my GPA. Another really important thing for you to know is that you can retake classes that you haven't passed. So even if you get, this 2.43 GPA your first semester, you get your first F maybe. Some people occasionally might even get more than one F in your first semester. This is a hard transition. It can happen. And that doesn't mean anything. You have not ruined your career at Cal. You cannot ruin your career at Cal in one semester. You can retake classes. You can retake up to 12 units and have the new grade completely replace the old one in your GPA. We'll talk to you all more about that later. But I just want you to know your main priority this first semester is just to make it through, enroll in the right number of units for you, whether it's 13 or so or a reduced course load, and make it to the end. And if you don't get the grades you want in your first semester, like I said, you're just at the beginning of a long journey and you're going to be fine. If you do take all of your classes pass not pass in this semester, then that's triggers a 0 GPA, which would put you on something called academic probation. We are happy to talk to you about that. It can be a stressful situation, but it's not quite as scary as it sounds. And as long as you're in touch with advisors, we can give you the support to get you through that situation. The other thing I want to be super clear about, 2 more details about pass not pass. Number 1, most grad schools do not care if you have some pass not pass grades in classes that are not relevant. Similarly, Berkeley doesn't care if you have pass not pass grades in classes that aren't relevant to the requirements over here on the list on the right side. You're allowed to take up to about a third of your classes pass, not pass, and still graduate from Cal with honors. You know, you're a brilliant person. A third of your classes, you can do this. There's a rule called the 1/3 pass, not pass rule, and your advisors can show you how to do the calculation to see if you're doing fine. But almost everybody has no trouble making sure that about 2/3 of your classes are letter graded. So know that there's a lot of room to play with these, and grad schools won't care as long as the classes you have pass, not passed aren't the ones they're looking for letter grades in. The one exception is law schools. And I don't really love this thing that law schools do, but I'm not yet queen of the world, so I haven't been able to fix it. But when I do run for queen of the world, I hope you'll vote for me so I can change this. But the way that law schools look at your grades is they always look at it the way of the left side of this screen, where it says letter grade all the way down to the 2.4 GPA. They will take your NPs and they will pretend that they are still Fs. However, if you're headed for law school and you're thinking, oh, should I change this to pass, not pass or not? Law school is going to think it's an F. Maybe I should just leave it an F. We actually recommend that you still, if you're not passing a class, if you know you're getting an F, you might as well change it to pass, not pass, because for every other part of your life, you'll be able to have that higher GPA. It doesn't work for law school, but it's still good for everything else. And then the last detail about pass, not pass that I want you to know is that this is a gamble. And so different schools do things differently. And here at Cal, we want you to decide this by the 10th week of instruction. But you don't know for sure what your grade will be, right? Nobody knows that until the grade comes in. You will have 6 more weeks of studying, of finals. But we ask you to make your best guess. And I want you to know, we know it's a gamble, and we know some people don't guess in the way that they would have if they had more information. So every Cal student has at least one grade that they're like, oh, I really wish I'd made that one pass, not pass, or oh, I really, really wish I hadn't made that pass, not pass. And so one thing I encourage you to do is if you've got a class that you're like, I don't know, should I, shouldn't I? You can always check with your professor, because it's very common here for us as brilliant Cal students to be like, oh my God, I'm sure I'm flunking, I'm going to change it. But if you go to your professor the day after the deadline and the professor's like, why did you change that grade? You were getting an A. That can be really frustrating. So try to get real data before you change it. Try to check in with your professors the week before the deadline, but know that it's a gamble. So sometimes it doesn't quite work out, and that's all part of a UC Berkeley transcript. Next slide, please, Brandy. Is that me or you? I guess that's me. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about your scheduling priorities. What is a good suggested schedule for your first semester? And if any of the people watching this are in my cohort, then you watched the video that I sent out to you where I talked to you about your ideal load for your first semester and your secret jobs for your first semester. When I say secret job, what I mean is you've got something to do this fall semester that doesn't give you units, doesn't give you grades, you don't get paid, but it takes up time. And that is learn how to do this. None of you have ever been freshmen at UC Berkeley before. You probably have never lived with the roommate you'll be living with. You probably have not eaten the cafeteria food you'll be eating. You probably haven't had to use the study skills that you'll have to use or use the commute mode that you'll have to use. There's a lot of learning to be done, and that takes a lot of brain space. So even if you're the kind of person who was like, I took 7 AP classes all at once in high school, and I was working a 40-hour job and raising my siblings, so I'm sure that I can handle 16 units. You might be able to handle 16 units, but fewer people can do that comfortably than the people who think they can, because this transition can be really big. You got to put a lot of energy into learning how to do this. So I tend to be kind of a conservative advisor. So I tend to recommend that you keep it down on the low end of your units and try to aim for 13 or 14. We've got 13 to 16 here because in the end, I know Cal, but you know you. Hang on, I dry throat now. So we're going to talk to you about the pros and cons and risks of more units, but you get to decide what your risk tolerance is. When you make this balance schedule, here's what we recommend. One class, it's the third one on this list, for your university requirements. So your reading and composition, your breath, your American cultures, or if all of those happen to be magically done, which is rare, but it happens, you can just grab a cool elective, like, oh, I can take that class from a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. Awesome. So something fun in that one slot. And then the 2 slots above it, 2 classes towards sort of the majors you're thinking about, the pathways that you're thinking of going to. And I want to remind you that we really do recommend that you question your major in your first semester. And I'm going to put the link in the chat right now that has a link to a website where I've put a lot of resources for you, including the 4 Steps to Success in Letters and Science, which is a great workshop to help you adjust, and the 7 Steps to Choose a Major, which is a workshop that I recommend all of you do so that you can really get a sense of all the majors that we have here. Take 2 classes towards majors you're thinking about, take 1 class towards university requirements, and then this last one we call elective, that means choice, right? I recommend that this last one be a 1 or 2 unit transition class. And we've talked about those in the modules in GBA, like Berkeley Connect and the Frosh seminars and decals and things like that. You can grab another class up to 4 units if you want, but we really do want you to think about, do you really want to have a huge load in your first semester? One thing we recommend is shopping and dropping. And I know we mentioned that in the modules too. So you get yourself up to like 17 units. And then in your first week before the deadline, you drop the class you like the least. This kind of balanced schedule is what students tell us work best. We really recommend especially that you have no more than 2 classes that are the same kind of class. For instance, there are some people who are like, I want to take 4 mathematical technicals. I want to take computer science 61A. I want to take math 1B. I want to take statistics 20, and I want to take data 8. And the students who tend to choose to do that, although that sounds like a really exciting and really challenging and together schedule, they don't tend to do as well because our brains really don't like doing the same thing over and over. And again, your mileage may vary, your results may vary, but in general, the students who take more than 2 classes that use the same kind of parts of your brain, more than 2 tech classes, more than 2 writing classes, they don't tend to get grades as high as the students who really do this sort of balanced schedule of a little bit of everything. Next slide, please.
Okay, so Tori started transitioning us to this route, which is kind of like, well, we talked a lot about what you might want to do with your ideal schedule, but we also want to talk about the reality that you may not get everything on your ideal schedule when it actually comes to enrolling. In fact, it's very likely you will not get into every class on your ideal schedule on enrollment day. So that can be a really scary thought, but because it's very likely to happen, if we can prepare for that ahead of time, I think the students who feel like they've adjusted to those expectations, prepared for that scenario, they feel a lot more comfortable when it actually happens on enrollment day. So that's what we're going to talk about here. So first, I want to make sure you're aware of prerequisites and reserved seats before enrollment day. So we're going to do a little walkthrough of reserved seats in a few slides, but prerequisites are classes that have to be done before you can take a course. And reserved seats, just quick definition, are when open seats in a class are reserved for specific populations at Berkeley. And you would need to match that population in your Cal Central in order to get one of those seats. Every year on enrollment day, we have students at the virtual front desk being like, why am I getting error messages? And it can just feel a little bit more chaotic. So if you're prepared for making sure both your ideal schedule and your alternate lists are clear with the prerequisites and the reserved seats, you'll at least improve your chances of being able to get into classes that you've prepared. We also recommend a robust list of alternative classes. On your final schedule, I believe we've left you about 5 or 6 slots to plan alternate class options. And I absolutely recommend filling out all of those slots because really that's kind of a minimum of what I would actually have prepared for enrollment day. You can think of alternates in a couple ways. One might be different sort of options for what I might call the same category of classes on your schedule. So if you're interested in reading and composition part A, knowing that that has small class sizes, you might look at multiple reading and comp part A classes and have some of those as your alternates. But every semester, students don't get any reading in Comp Part A. So because of that, you might also want to identify a class that's not a reading and comp class that would work for your schedule in case you don't get into the reading and comp at all. Another thing that might happen is that you might get waitlisted for a class. So for most classes at Berkeley, you do have the option to add to a waitlist if the class is full, but the waitlist still has openings on the waitlist. So if you are waitlisted for a class, my first tip, Just give it a few days. You'll be surprised what can happen over a weekend or even a week. While enrollment day is a big deal because you want to take advantage of it, the secret is enrollment doesn't end on enrollment day. It keeps going. So people over the weekend are going to change their minds. They're going to switch out of classes. And then very shortly, our continuing students will get into their phase 2, which we talked about earlier. So they'll start to throw around different classes in their schedule. So you'll see movement going around with these wait lists, even in as much as a week after you enroll. So just be patient with it and see what happens at that point. Also, remember that both a lecture and a section have to be open for you to get into a class. That's in general, but also true if you're on a wait list. So we recommend looking at the sections to see if there are sections with either open seats or maybe with wait lists that aren't as large. Those might enhance your chances of getting in. Also, by the time you have your first day of instruction, we really, really, really recommend that you are actually enrolled in at least 12 units. That means not waitlisted, because waitlisted classes don't count towards your enrollment. You can start to get into a point where you're gambling a lot, especially if you are on a visa or an athlete or on financial aid. So again, you might get to this point where you need to make some tough decisions if you're waitlisted for a lot of classes to maybe get off some of those waitlists so you can make sure you have a full seat in a course. And lastly, on our YouTube page, where you'll find this webinar later this week, we also, if you search our videos, we have one called the 10% rule for waitlists. And this is just a little bit more about how to use this kind of 10% figure of the total class size to give you some benchmarks to think about your waitlist position and the likelihood of getting in. Don't have time to get into it today, but that video is short and quick and just really helpful to give you a sense of where your waitlist position is. On to math courses.
All right. So y'all, if you remember nothing else of what I tell you today, I want you to remember this. Choosing your first math class at Berkeley, if you're going to take a math class, and some of you will not have to take a math class, yay. If you don't want to, you probably don't have to. But if you're going to take a math class, choosing your first math course is the #1 way that you can help make your transition to Cal go well. Because math in particular, we have found that students like to just sort of grab a class. There can be some peer pressure, like, oh, my friends are in this class, so I think I should be in this one, or that hot kid is in that class and I want to sit next to that hot person. But also you might feel like, well, it says that if I got a 3 or higher on the Calc AP, then I'm probably ready for this one math class. And so I'm just going to take that. The trick is everybody is different. And the math classes in your high school may not have prepared you exactly for the way that Berkeley teaches it. And so these big general statements you see on websites, oh, you can take, if you got this score, then you can waive this math class. They don't really take into account individual differences, and they don't take into account sort of the stress that you might go through if you're in a math class that is not the right level your first semester. I've said it before and I'll say it again. You can't ruin your career in your first semester at Cal. Even if you take the wrong math class and you end up with an F, you're going to be fine. At the same time, the emotional panic and horrible feelings of struggling and drowning in a math class, it's really exhausting, and it can make not just your first semester rough, but also your second semester as you're trying to recover. And we are happy to help you with that, but I would rather help you not be in that boat. And so the best way to make sure that you are in the right math class for your level is to use the resources here at Cal. And I really want to underline, especially this first bullet here, the math department website has the calculus placement exam and the final exam archive. And those are the 2 tools that I have found most powerful for you to be able to get yourself into the math class that will be perfect for you. The calculus placement exam is for deciding between 3 levels of math. We have 3 tracks of math. We have the math that is numbered 16, A and B, the math that is numbered 1A and 1B, and 10A and 10B. Those are all at the same level. Those are all first semester calculus, second semester calculus. The A's are the first semester and the B is the second. but they have different focuses. The 16 track is for people who are not going to do any more math after that. It's like a minimum for medical school, things like that. The 1 track is for people who are going to do a lot more math afterwards. If you're going to go to graduate school in math or economics, be a math major, that kind of thing. The 10 track is for people who are usually wanting to head into some of our bio majors. It's got some statistics that are really useful for biology, etc. And you can look up on each of our major websites which maths they recommend. But the placement exam will tell you whether you should be in an A or a B or in 32, which is the one that leads to it. And I think it's really funny that for math, all the numbers are like not in order, like it goes 32, then 16, but whatever. So when you take that, if you're not sure if you need to take pre-calculus or calculus, and if you're not sure if you need to take semester 1 of calc or semester 2, the calculus placement exam will help you decide between those 3 things. In addition, I cannot emphasize this enough. The final exam archive from the math department is a huge gift to you because you're going to see everything it is you have to know. So if you're like, well, I got a certain grade on the math AP and people say you can skip math 1A if you got that grade on the AP, but I'm not sure if I should, let me check. Even if you are sure if you should, I still recommend that you check. Go look at the final exams for math 1A. And if you look through the final exams for math 1A and you're like, check, check, I know all this, I would get an A on this final if I was given it right now, you're ready for math 1B. If you look at the final exams for math 1A and you're like, I don't know that I'd pass this final, I might squeak by with a C minus, then I would recommend you take that class again. Even if you feel like I've already covered this material, if you don't feel like you could perform well on that exam, then that is the university telling you you need more work before you're ready to do well at the next level. So again, I really, really recommend that you take this very seriously. If you're going to take a math class in the first semester, make sure that it is one where you're going to land solidly on your feet and be preparing for doing really well in the next level. We also have our Student Learning Center, which is an amazing resource. You've gotten links to it in your Golden Bear modules. And one of the things that they offer are adjunct courses, which are courses that are designed to be adjunct next to other courses. So if you're taking Math 32 or Math 16A, there might be an adjunct course, usually called Math 98, but you can look it up through the SLC website, that will help you pass that first big math class. These can be excellent, excellent courses. So we highly recommend that you connect with the adjunct courses if you need it. Next slide, I think, is Brandy's.
Okay, great. So we've talked a lot about what to take in your first semester. Let's talk about what to avoid in your first semester. So the first thing I want to dive into are upper division classes, because I think these can cause a lot of confusion. I've already seen definitely a lot of these on the final assignments that have been submitted so far. So upper division classes are numbered 100 and above. And these classes are designed for junior and senior students. So we do have a few exceptions in your module, and those ones are okay for first semester students. But in general, we do recommend avoiding these classes in your first term. And that's because even if you feel super engaged with the topic, even if you have a background in the topic, because the way that it's taught is thinking that you'll have already transitioned to Berkeley, there might be a difference in expectation on the level of, say, analysis on a final assignment or the way that exams are structured. So these can just provide a lot of challenge in your first term. And while there are some that might work out well for you, most students don't start these until at least their sophomore year. So one, don't rush ahead, and two, just really put a lot of thought into these classes. Do research with the major advisor if you find one that you think might be appropriate for a first semester student but are unsure. And in general, we just recommend waiting on these. You'll have so much opportunity to engage with these exciting courses. There's no rush to do it right away. We also have some lower division classes that we don't recommend in your first semester, though the students tend to sometimes gravitate towards them. So Bio 1A and the lab, Stats 20 and 21, and Econ 1 are all extremely intensive courses, even though they might sound familiar to work that you may have done in high school. These combine a lot of work into one semester. They may have prerequisites that may not be as obvious at first. So I don't have a ton of time to get into all the reasons why. Certainly, if you have questions, reach out to your advisor. But we just find that students always do better in these classes if they've had some time to adjust to Berkeley first. And then Tori actually touched upon this in a previous slide, but I just want to highlight that we find that the key to academic success in your first semester is that balanced course load. So you'll hear don't take more than 2 technicals. And what we really mean by that are STEM courses at Berkeley, as well as writing intensive courses. And that's partly from what Tori talked about, is just our brain likes to have some variety, but also because these classes in particular tend to be very, very homework intensive. And so even if you have a lot of competency in the subjects, just keeping up with that avalanche of coursework is going to get really, really tough if you've taken more than 2 on. And then we want to talk about those reserved seats that we mentioned before. So again, reserved seats are seats that are reserved for specific populations at Cal. So I want to show you, this is in the class schedule or classes.berkeley.edu, and we'll use the example of SBM 50AC. Now, if we scroll down to look at which seats are open, we can see the seat reservations. So we might see seat reservations that say they're unreserved, or we might see something that actually works in your favor, like it's for L&S first and second year students. But in this case, we see that basically all the seats are reserved for different flavors of College of Natural Resource students. So as a first year student in L&S, you wouldn't automatically be able to grab one of these seats. If you tried to enroll, you would get an error message. Now, that said, there is another helpful tool. Over here, we can find the graph that shows us what the plan is for these reserved seats. Now, in this case, we can look, if we highlight the different bars for the reserved seats, we can actually see that these seat reservations are due to end on July 17th. This one's July 16th. So while you'll be enrolling on July 13th, like we talked about earlier, your enrollment phase doesn't end that day. So if you wait a week, you may actually be able to grab a seat in this course. So some of these tools can help you predict if seat reservations might lift. If these bars extend to infinity, I very, very much recommend don't waste your time on that course. Just move on and plan to take that in the future when you do meet the seat reservation, if that's part of your plan. Okay. Academic exploration.
All righty. So this part is really fun. I love this part. Now we do want to wind up in time to have questions, so I'm just going to give you a little taste. But one of the most important things we can tell you today is how much room you have to have fun. And I can tell you, as a former Berkeley student, sometimes we don't realize we're allowed to have fun. We're like, got to take the classes, got to get the check boxes done, got to just check, check, check. You actually, most Cal students who thrive, most Cal students who report that they're happy that they went to Cal and they got what they wanted out of Cal, have been the ones who have been willing to step away a little bit from that checklist, the ones who've been willing to try classes that aren't already on the list of I've got to get this done. You get a whole lot more information about this in the 4 Steps to Success in L&S workshop, which is again linked on that page through tinyurl.com/4stepsbrosh. There's also the 7 Steps to Choose a Major workshop that I really recommend all of you take. And I'll tell you, both of those workshops, the 4 Steps and the 7 Steps, they're both me. So, you know, you might be getting a little tired of my ridiculous style, but it's good information. And you don't even have to look at it. You don't have to look at my goofy graphics. You can lie back on a couch, close your eyes, drink your favorite boba tea. But if you've watched the 4 Steps and or the 7 Steps workshop, students tell me that this has set people up so much better to succeed and thrive here at Cal and be open to academic exploration and to understand where it's okay to really sort of reach outside of your comfort zone and not just have everything count for a requirement. Now, when you are trying to plan your schedule, I want you to know there are ways to find requirements. There's a breadth search engine, On the schedule of classes, you can just search for a particular breath course if there's ones you want to fill. And I really recommend that you not rush through your breath. Treasure your breath. This is our gift to you. This is our way of saying, don't just do major and career prep, major and career prep. I can't see anything else. There are Pulitzer Prize winning poets on campus. There are Nobel Prize winning professors who are teaching classes for students who don't have a background in that topic. And so here are some ways that you really can broaden your time here. We've got discovery courses. I wish I could talk to you about these for an hour, but I'm just going to say these are some of the best courses on campus. The discovery courses, the big ideas courses, these are courses taught by professors who've been handpicked because they're splendid teachers. People walk out of these classes going, I can't wait to go back to this class. I love it so much. And the topics are cutting edge and exciting. Your professors really care about you. There's classes like language and power, and earthquakes in your backyard, and physics and music, and California cuisine, and the history of Hollywood, really interesting things. Alex Filipenko is a professor who teaches Astrophysics 10, Introduction to Astronomy or Astrophysics, not sure which word. Everybody loves him. He throws donuts at you while you're in class. He's amazing. The big ideas courses are like the discovery courses, but with more than one professor, so you get more ideas, more intersectionality. Course spreads are mini minors on cutting edge topics that don't even have departments yet. The Frosh and sophomore seminars are like the discovery courses, but teeny tiny, only 15 students. I still remember the Frosh seminar that I enrolled in fall of the year 1567 when I was a Frosh, and how special that was, and how my professor invited us to dinner at his house at the end of the program, and how that really made me feel connected to Cal. We have decal courses, which are really cool. They're taught by students. You all could teach some someday. So we really encourage you to look at everything Berkeley has and not just follow that checklist. And again, the 4 Steps to Success workshop tells you more about that. I also want you to know that we really do want you to question your major as part of stepping away from the checklist. And there's 2 workshops on that sheet that can help you. There's the 7 steps to choose a major, which is looking at everything. But if you're feeling really sure, if you're like, Tori, I know my major, it's going to be applied math, it's going to be econ, it's going to be whatever, I don't want to question it. I encourage you then to just do a little workshop I've designed called the 3 steps to confirm your major. And the reason I encourage that is that psychology at Cal may not resemble what you think psychology is. Economics at Cal may be different from what you think economics is, and you might be happier in another major, but you'll never know if you don't check. So the 7 steps, the 3 steps, one of those is a really good tool for you, whether if you're sure and you're like, really don't want to bother, do the 3 steps. But if you're open, I really recommend the 7 steps to check out everything. And then you can really take advantage of everything that's here. You only get to be a Cal student once. We want you to get everything you can out of this experience. So that is everything that we are planning to cover. So we are now able to take questions from you all in the Q&A if there's stuff we haven't covered yet.
And just really quickly before we jump to questions, if you're viewing this on YouTube later, the 7 steps to choose a major workshop and the 4 steps to success workshops are both in this playlist, the L&S Advising webinars playlist. All right, time for questions. Armand, do you have anything for us?
Right now, none. If we want to move to the next one. Sorry, I'm having some issues with my keyboard.
No problem. Jesus.
Yes, Shri asks, where's the link for the 3 steps? I can't find it in the Google Doc, just the 7 steps.
I think that one might not be there yet, so I'm going to put it on right now.
Okay, cool. All right, also, we have a question from Anya. If I have declared a major, how do I change it to be undeclared?
Great. Tori, do you want me to take that one? All right, I'll jump in for that. Okay, so if you're coming in as a first-year student to L&S, you're actually coming in undeclared. Even if you listed a major, everyone listed a major on their application, you're still coming in undeclared. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't be that major. Certainly, you'll be working towards your prerequisites to declare that major. But if you'd like to change your major direction, that's okay too. On your final assignment, we recommend focusing more on the major directions that you want rather than being stuck with what you've already listed. Now, if it's a high demand major that you're interested in now and you didn't put that on your application, we do have a high demand major policy that would mean that you'd be up for comprehensive review when you go to declare. And that's certainly something that you could think about with your L&S College Advisor for GBA. So we do recommend that unless you unless you listed a high demand major on your application, that at least one of your options are not a high demand major. But in general, because you're coming in as undeclared, you do have that flexibility to start pivoting your direction even now.
Let me also ask one more, and then we can go to another chatter. Keith asks, are there any classes, in your opinion, that are must-take classes?
Tori, do you have some thoughts on that one?
Oh, I do. Because I'm opinionated on everything.
I thought you might like that one, Tori.
So yes and no. First of all, the discovery courses tend to be absolutely spectacular. And the Frosh and sophomore seminars tend to be absolutely spectacular. So you can definitely look under those and you can search by those categories in the schedule of classes, and you just can't go wrong. I've had students tell me, oh, you told me to take a Frosh and sophomore seminar, but the ones I wanted were all full. So I just grabbed this random one and it turned out to be so great. Now I'm majoring in that. So even if it doesn't sound interesting, the format of it being so small and having such passionate professors, it really can be a life-changing experience. I also recommend Berkeley Connect very highly. That is the program where you get a unit just for people worrying about you. You show up and they say, how are you doing? Are you well adjusted to Cal? Why don't you watch this seminar and eat this pizza? It's a really great way to get a unit and to feel connected to Cal. Beyond that, what I really recommend is that you look in our schedule of classes and type in anything that you might be interested in the keyword search section. You can search for numbers, you can search for the names of classes, but you can also search for keywords. So if you're really interested in immigration, we don't have a major called immigration, but if you type immigration into the keyword search, you'll find all the classes we have that touch on it. English, history, all of the different ethnic studies classes, sociology, psychology. So I really encourage you to think about what matters to you, what topics are you interested in, and then look for those topics in our schedule of classes. Check to see who's discussing it and in what departments. And then finally, I really recommend that every student who is at all interested, study abroad, if you can. Now, most students think, oh, that might be really expensive, or oh, I don't have time. Financial aid actually really wants you to study abroad because it turns out it's cheaper to live everywhere else in the world than it is to live in Berkeley. But also it's an absolutely life-changing experience. And when you come back to the Cal campus, you have changed for the better and you bring back to us the things you learned over there. So we really encourage you to seriously consider studying abroad. You can go for as few as 3 weeks if you want. You have the time to do this. We give you more time than you need to change your major a few times. We give you more time than you need to fit in studying abroad or other programs. We really encourage you to sink your teeth into this education and have as much fun as you can.
Great. Luis, do you have a question for us?
Yeah, I think a lot of the questions that I saw, especially when y'all went to the math portion, a lot of students still ask like, well, I took a class, like I took an AP course, I took a course at a community college, at another university. Do you still recommend I go on to the next level of the course, right? Yeah, do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. So the wonderful, cool thing about the way Cal does some of their policies is that, let's say you have AP credit for a course, or even if you took it at, say, California Community College already, and it transfers as, say, Math 1A, we will still give you credit even if you take that course again at Cal. And that includes the grade points. So you can still take it again. I think just using the tools that Tori talked about to make sure that your placement is right, that's the most important thing. So even if you take it and it feels like a lot of the material is familiar, and it's an easy A for you, I just feel like, there's worse things in the world than having an easy A and then just feeling really, really confident about your foundation before moving on to the next course. Just to kind of note, that doesn't work the opposite way. So if you've taken Math 1A here, don't go back to the community college and start taking those classes there. But yeah, you can still get credit if you do it here. And like I said, like Tori said, those resources are just phenomenal for helping you find what is going to be the good fit for you. All right, Fung, do you have anything for us?
Yes, just one final question. What do you suggest doing if a student cannot get into a class that they really want, but at the same time, they don't have any other classes in mind?
Can I take that one, Brandy? So that is pretty common. And it's common because you don't know this place very well, right? Like you don't really have a sense of what might be out there other than the major that you've maybe been imagining for the last couple of years in high school. That's when you can really ask your advisor. You can also ask your friends, hey, what are you taking? Especially if they're headed in sort of different directions from you are, from the direction that you're headed in. If you've got friends who are like, you're in a social science major and they're in tech, or the other way around, you can sort of poke around and ask people, what are you looking at? I also, as a general rule, if you're really feeling stuck, then again, those discovery courses, that Berkeley Connect courses, those freshman sophomore seminars, they're always great choices. In addition, any sort of lower division course that's numbered lower than 100, so lower division means it's for freshman sophomores, that's the basic entry level course to any social science. Those tend to be pretty eye-opening. Those tend to be things that aren't necessarily offered in high schools, and they can tend to be really warm and welcoming places. So I'm talking about, like, I don't know the numbers for art history, but it used to be art history 10 or 11 was the basic. Music 27 AC is the history of, gosh, is it the history of Western music? My brain is showing my age. Ethnic studies 11A and 20A. All of the sociology 3 AC, Psych 1, what are some other cool social sciences? There's Celtic studies, there's social welfare might have a lower division one. So anything that's a basic entry to any of our sort of social sciences and humanities, usually you're totally ready for it. Often it's a topic you didn't have in high school. And especially it can be a real balance from you're doing reading and composition and you're like, I know how to write already, but this is something you don't know. And we are at time.
Yes. So I want to echo what Tori just said. We're going to try to encourage you to push yourself out of your comfort zone here at Cal. Try things. That's the best way to have experiences that are exciting. Thank you so much for joining us today. The video recording will be able to be viewed on our YouTube page at UC L&S Advising. And while we say 5 to 7 business days, we really anticipate this will be up by Friday. So if you do wish to view this recording, just check back onto our webinars page and we will have the link there to our YouTube. Thank you so much, everybody. That's a wrap. Have a good day.
Welcome to Cal.